So what? So like I said, in the mornings I'm gonna do less education and more, focus on just trading and just say, okay, we're looking for a long, we're looking for a short, and then I'll point out why. But the plan is to do less education. So right now, what I'm seeing is I'm looking for a short, but I want to do a little bit more education here because it's such a nice chart setup. So if you look at this, obviously, we started off with, a big candle up. And again, that's the market is always going to try and trap people. So they want to trap bulls. So you can see even we had very nice money flow there. So I mean, if you look at the indicators, it said long there. You got nice money flow, okay, but then you basically had these a full-bodied green candle followed by a full-bodied red candle of equal size, and that usually, when you see that, that's usually a reversal right there. Now, when you have a long, obviously we said never to buy on a green candle. You're never going to long on a green candle. So even if you sold as long from the indicator, the long direction, you see a full-bodied red candle of equal size. Usually you wait for a red candle to get in. I mean, you guys know this by now, okay? But when you see that red candle of equal size, that is an immediate red flag that says, okay, I am not getting in because this looks like a reversal. Okay. Now, you can see we're rejecting here. We come up, we reject the upper Bollinger Band and then immediately goes down. Now, if you have, experience with price action, that was a good setup. But even if you wanted to wait for this down arrow, for the signal again, you're going to wait for, when you get that down, you're going to wait for the pullback. You're never going to just immediately get in on an arrow. You're always going to wait for that pullback. Now, at this point, it's 9, if I look at the chart here, it's 9:50 a.m., okay? Um, so you have to look at that and say, okay, this is this is the beginning of a downtrend, okay? Because what's our rules for a downtrend? Can you guys remember, Nina? Well, that
The
so
I don't know.
yeah,
They're
so
under.
so a downtrend, so a downtrend, when you have a downtrend, every pop is sold. You see this bounce? So when you're in a downtrend, every bounce is sold. Okay. So the fact that they're trying to recover and then sold, that that behavior says this looks like a downtrend. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. In an uptrend, every pullback is bought up. Okay, because so the way it works is if you're in an uptrend and you get a pullback, the bull says, "Yay, I waited for a better price before I get in," because they say, "I am not going to get long at the top. I'm waiting for a better price." The same with a downtrend. When you move down and it bounces, the bear says, "Yay, I got a better price on my short, so I'm getting in." Okay, because if you're a if you're an experienced trader, you're never gonna take a short on that red candle. You're like, even if it moves, even if this is the most amazing short and it keeps going without me, I'm fine missing the trade because I know the risk of getting short on a red candle. So you have to understand how they think, okay? So they're not gonna get into short on a red candle. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes.
Okay. So when they get this bounce, they say, "Hallelujah, I'm in." And they so that's why when you have a strong move down that becomes a downtrend, you want to see this kind of behavior, okay? So once you see that you have this bounce and then it's sold, so now you could say it's acting like it should in a downtrend, okay? Now, it can go here and then it could totally bounce. So, I mean, so you have to understand that there's no guarantees. So, the next thing I want to point out is you want to think as every day that starts up, you want to draw a box. So, the box is going to be pre market high, pre market low. Okay. And usually, when you get to the bottom of the box, you're gonna, you expect longs. When you get to the top of the box, you expect shorts. Now, it's not guaranteed to happen, but trading is about probabilities and putting in your favor. Then there's another box, which is the previous day high and low. Okay. Um, but in this case, what you can see is when this move comes down, where does it bounce? Okay. So you can see that the first bounce is at the pre-market low. So you always want to keep these levels in mind. So sometimes it just cuts right through it. But if you wanted to take along, the closer you get to the bottom of to the pre-market low, the better price you're getting. And remember yesterday, now we didn't do an live session, but even before the market opened, I reminded people that the best long was at the pre-market low, and I even gave you the level. And if you just put a standing order there, just above the pre-market low yesterday, you would have caught the entire move because it was the low of the day, and then we made new all-time highs. So you have to understand why these levels are so important. Okay, so we get our first bounce there. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to notice. So it's an expected place for a bounce. Does it mean it's going to hold? No, and in this case, it didn't hold. Now, many times when you're in a downtrend and you get a bounce, the bounce will run out of steam at the alpha zone. Okay, so if you took a long year, then you know to lock in profits at the alpha zone. Okay. Can you guys see why this is such a great chart and all of the valuable examples that it gives? Because this is a very common behavior. And if you understand how these things work, you know where you can take a long if you're an aggressive trader, you know where to take profit. And then when it rejects, you're like, okay, this is looking like, a downtrend and it moves down. And now you get to, usually the first half an hour, you can have some traps and then it reverse. But if it keeps going after 10 a.m., then the chances of that becoming a trend is much stronger. And that's why when I get on, I'm like, okay, I'm looking for shorts because it's acting like a downtrend. You see that? There's another bounce that gets sold. And then because it's been doing this for 45 minutes and you have VIX bouncing, now, I cannot look for longs. Now, obviously, we have a little bit of yellow buying pressure, um, which means that the bulls have not given up yet. Which means it could turn, but it also means that if they give up, you could see a sudden flush to the bottom. Okay, and then let's take a quick look at NQ. So you can see NQ had, obviously it's much weaker. You can see we had a nice short there even before market opened. And you want to always watch both of these charts. You can see we had this already was saying, hey, I want to go down. You see it at a much bigger bounce and then short the bounce, bounce, short. And you can see every time we have a lower high. So there's a high, lower high, lower high, lower high. Okay. So you can see that um, NQ is pushing down. Again, the bulls have not given up. So when you see these yellow flashing lights, you know that the bulls haven't given up. So there is a chance that it could still bounce because it's not solid blue. But right now, you're definitely not looking for longs because you don't have anything that tells you to look for longs. But I mean, longs could work. You have to know that any kind of trade can work. But I always like to say, what am I looking for? And if I'm looking for shorts, then I'm gonna try and I mean, I could sit on my hands. Obviously, I don't have to trade. But if I'm looking for shorts, then I'm not gonna take longs. So then I'm gonna look for bounces and I'm gonna short it. And then if I have a big red candle, I'm gonna lock in. Um, and if I have if I have a confirmed trend, I'm gonna on my third successful trade, third one, I'm gonna try and hold it more as a runner because now I have a buffer build up so that if I'm wrong, I'm still gonna be profitable for the day. Um, but if I see this yellow buying pressure, then I either sit on my hands or I just take my profit more quickly. But, again, we're acting like we should in a downtrend and VIX is bouncing. So that's, yeah, you can see VIX is respecting the alpha zone. It's above it. So that's why, the trade I'm looking for is, short on every bounce. So not a short at the bottom, a short at the top. Where's the top? You don't know, but you want to get, you know, close or into the alpha zone, and then you're getting a better price. Or you can wait until like 11 when everything settles down a little bit, but you can definitely be more profitable um around 10 a.m. if you take trades where there's clear direction and catching those moves. Any any questions? I mean, that's all of the education I wanted to put in there today because it was just such an easy to read setup in terms of we're acting like a downtrend, and so that's why. And obviously we have a down signal as well, and you guys know how good these guys are. Again, not if you immediately get in, but if you wait for the bounce, these signals are very reliable and nothing is 100%. But, then we're also acting the way we should in a downtrend. And that could change at any time. So that's why, lock in profits on big candles. Nina, making sense? Datalex?
Yeah, it makes sense. Actually, when short that first bounce, like I went in too quickly and it was like it's going back long, so I exited.
Well, I mean, so
Uh,
so I know that, you're trading, ES and stay small. But I think while you're learning, maybe if you're struggling to hold long enough, maybe just practice with micros, because it's much easier to hold longer when you have micros than if you have minis, just until you get a good feel for it. So you may want to try that because if you struggle to hold long enough, then scaling down is definitely what you want to consider.
Bitter,
That's right.
like two steps.
And you should
It
expect
was
that.
it,
You should expect that. It's if it was easy, you know, everyone would be rich. So it's not going to be easy, but I mean, as long, I mean, I'm trying to teach you guys how to read the indicators because I think the indicators are amazing. Obviously, I'm biased, but that is just a small part of being successful at trading. Because, like, even when I told you it's a downtrend, you know, it doesn't mean that you're going to make money because the execution is honestly the hardest part. And that's the part that you can only get through practice. I mean, I can give you ideas on how to do it, but there's no replacement for practice. So the more you just take every trade, and if you keep it small with micros, then you're not gonna be afraid to take it. But you want to take, if this looks like a downtrend, and again, it's not financial advice, but what I would, like what I did in the beginning is like take every every bounce and short it. Okay. Even if you're wrong, because this is what you're trading. Now VIX is pulling back, so it might be over. But I mean, when you see a trade that meets your criteria, you want to take every one of it. And then if you're wrong, you're wrong. You're like, because that's the practice you have to get. And so if you only sometimes take it, then you're not going to become a good trader because you're always going to hesitate. You're always like, well, and then you're going to wait too long, and then by the time you take it, then you're wrong and it turns on you and you're going to lose. So it's really important, whatever your rules are, you have to take every trade. Like now, if you sit down and say, I'm trading, I can focus now. Obviously, don't take the trade if you're not able to focus. But if you're able to focus and you're like, okay, I'm trading now, you really want to get in the habit of taking every trade that meets your criteria, whatever it is. Now, I'm not saying be click happy. I'm not saying just press buttons because you want to. But if your rules say this is a short, take it. If it says no, want to wait a little bit because VIX is pulling back, then obviously you're not gonna do anything. But many times VIX will pull back a little bit, and then just to give hope to bulls, and then it will still go down. So there was a couple of days ago where we were a little careful because VIX was pulling back, and then we had a massive dump. So the more you watch it, you're like, okay, this is probably just a fake out on VIX because we still have blue buying pressure, we have red dots. Then and we're below that green dot, green line. So if you look at this green line, that's a very important level. You can see we came up to it, and then we rejected. So, so for me, the short is still on. Now, even though VIX is pulling back a little bit, but this is probably a fake out, but you never know. Now, if we start getting big, if we start seeing consistent blue candles, full-bodied candles, then I'm gonna start taking it more serious. But like the first blue candle is not gonna get me to just give up on something that is acting very much like a downtrend. Let's look at the higher levels. Let's see where we could have possible bounces. So now, if you go to the 15-minute chart, obviously, if you look left, you can see that this is very thin structure here. Okay, so my next bounce on ES that I'm gonna expect is gonna be at this level, this 76 level. So unless I get strong bounce signals, this is my target. because you can see that this acted as resistance before, and this might now act as support. So, and then if it keeps coming down, this becomes my next, target level when I look back at the previous day. The other thing, we note too is if a downtrend persists for more than 30 minutes, then the first attempt at changing directions usually fails. So you can see how this was a good attempt to to turn it around, but it failed. So again, all of these guys, all of these bulls that got here long, they were wrong. So they're stopping out. So all of these guys stopping out gives me fuel to go down. So that's why I don't think the short is over yet, because these guys are all trapped. Okay. And they're going to hang in there and say, well, maybe it's going to bounce here when we get to an equal low. And so now they're really sweating, because if we go down here, we can see a big red candle, and then that big red candle, you want to lock in profits. But because this attempt failed, it just tells me that the short is not over, because these guys are now stopping out. And the and now, like I say, we have a confirmed downtrend. And so now, because it lasted this long, now the only way I'm going to change direction to long is I want to see an impulsive move down, like big candles happening very fast, and then with an impulsive green candle going up. And when that happens, then that's a failed breakdown, and that would give me a reason to go long. But you can see how this is. If you shorted that, that was good money. But then on a big red candle, you're going to lock in profit, because the market is going to go up and down, because the bulls have not given up yet. These guys are starting to give up. Okay, and that's why we get these momentum candles. But um, and you can see this. They're starting now to give up, give us momentum. We're starting to get blue money flow. We got red dots, and that's how you read the price action. So it's a combination of. And so now, okay, so now we're at the level where we said we could bounce. So if you got into that short, looking left, this is now a time to watch for a possible bear trap, which, again, impulsive candles down, followed by impulsive candle up. Now, if we keep going, like I say, this would be my next target, that's 64. And I mean, many of these levels you'll see will many times align with the Mancini levels, because, this is um, just the way it works. And so the indicator just marking the levels for you, but that's NQ. Because it marks it for you, it just makes it easier to follow.
Yeah,
Um,
they're aligned.
okay, I mean, I haven't even looked at his levels, but that's like a cheat code, and I wanted to point it out, because it's not rocket science, and so you could just use the indicator and just know it. Now, obviously, this is lining up with the previous day levels, which the indicator doesn't draw, because that would just make it too busy. But I showed you how you can just quickly get those. Um, and so just during the day, I mean, so you want to look at the different charts. So I have a dedicated iPad with this chart on it so that I could see the previous day's levels. And so this is where we expected a bounce. Now, a better bear trap would be if it undercuts it and then bounce hard. But so if it bounce here, it might be a slower bounce where it wants to do some sideways action first before it goes up. Good. Datalex, what should we call you? Do you want to be called Datalex, or do you have a different name you want us to use? Derek. Oh, okay, great. Yep. 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 Exactly. But yeah, I mean, so the only time I'll go long at this point is I need a failed breakdown, which means I want impulsive candles down followed by a reversal a green candle. And otherwise, I'm gonna keep shorting every bounce. Okay. So that's um and again, these rules work most of the time. And so I'm teaching you those rules. Um but at some point, it stops working. That's why, again, you have to take every trade that presents itself so that you can make up that profit. So if you short this bounce, you lock in before you get to the low of day. So that's very important because it could bounce. But the idea is to make enough profit so that when it stops working, you you're gonna lose, but you're gonna lose less than what you made. So first bounce short, first bounce, second short, short. So now at this point, when you short, you want to hold one as a runner because it's your third trade, and then this one now you're gonna just do a normal way. So bounce short, lock in, bounce short, lock in. Okay, but the runner you got around here, you keep while you're below the alpha zone. So I like on the third trade, if my first two trades are successful and I build up profit, then on my third trade, I'm I'm setting that up as a runner and I manage it the stop loss on the 5 minute candles like I explained before. If the trend goes on for, an hour or two, then I move it to the 12-minute candles because then, it could be a much deeper pullback. But then the rest of it, I just keep scalping. Bounce, short, lock in. Bounce, short, lock in. Does that make sense? No, but I mean, I don't care. I don't care. I like it when it goes up one day and down the next day because you make more money that way. Exactly. Yep. Good. Any other questions or comments?
I don't have.
Okay. But I mean, so that you may want to watch this video again multiple times because I think there were a lot of good things in here that I think the more you understand it, the more it will help with the trading.